On our anniversary, I caught my wife cheating and stealing my inheritance. I kissed her, stayed silent. 2 weeks later, my phone blew up with texts. Please God, answer. She won't stop screaming. Blood everywhere. What did you do? We're begging you. I found out my wife was planning to destroy me on the night I thought we were celebrating 10 years of marriage. It was supposed to be our anniversary. Steak dinner, candles, her in that red dress that used to drive me insane. Instead, I spent the night standing in the hallway, listening to her tell her family how she couldn't wait to be rid of me. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm 35, and until last Tuesday, I thought I was married to my soulmate. We lived in a renovated townhouse on the north side of Chicago, the kind of place I'd worked years in construction management to afford. My wife, Madison, handled marketing for a big firm downtown. She was the kind of woman who smiled with her whole face, or at least I used to think so. Everyone said we were solid. She was social, I was steady. She dreamed, I built. That night, she'd cooked my favorite meal. Roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, red wine breathing on the counter. We toasted to 10 more years, and I handed her a necklace I'd saved for months to buy. She cried, kissed me, said I was the best man alive. Then her phone buzzed. She said it was her mom, Vivian, calling about some neighborhood emergency. She went to the bedroom to take it. Door half closed. I was halfway to the kitchen for another glass of wine when I heard it, her voice. Only it wasn't the soft, loving tone she used with me. It was sharp, amused, almost cruel. Then came laughter, multiple voices. Vivian, her sister Chloe, and then a man. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But no, the man was Tyler, my best friend since high school. And then Madison said the words that cracked something in me forever. I'm sick of pretending to want him. Another few weeks and we'll have everything. Once Ethan's inheritance clears, I'm done. My grandmother's inheritance. $50,000 tied up in probate for 2 years. The money I plan to use to start my own contracting business. The dream I'd told Madison about since we were broke newlyweds. They knew about it. All of them. And worse, they'd planned around it. Tyler laughed and said, the guy still thanks me for helping around the house. If only he knew what I really fix when he's out of town. Madison giggled. He has no clue. I've been moving money for months. They talked for 25 minutes, dissecting every piece of my life like it was a con they were running together. When she came back out, she kissed me like nothing had happened, sat on my lap, told me she loved me. I smiled back, poured her another glass, played along, because at that moment, I realized something. She thought I was a fool, but fools can learn. And I had a plan forming that would make her regret ever underestimating me. To understand how I got here, you have to know where I came from. I wasn't born into money or connections. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. After that, it was just me and my grandmother, June Cole, the toughest, sharpest woman I've ever known. She raised me on hard lessons. Don't confuse kindness with weakness. And never let anyone make you feel small for being honest. I worked my way through college doing construction jobs, saving every dime. That's where I met Madison. She was 22, studying marketing, already the life of every room. I was the quiet guy with calloused hands and a 2-year-old pickup truck that barely ran. She said she liked that I was steady, that I didn't chase attention like every other guy on campus. Looking back now, I see the pattern. She didn't want someone steady. She wanted someone predictable. Someone she could study and manipulate. We got married right after graduation. I was 24, she was 23. The wedding was all Madison's design. Floral arches. A massive reception her mom insisted on hosting. Vivian, her mother, was a real estate agent with opinions about everything. She'd call me Ethan the Builder, like I was some handyman she hired instead of the man her daughter married. Chloe, Madison's younger sister, was the spoiled one. Always borrowing money, always between jobs. She'd come over uninvited, drink our wine, and vent about her love life. Madison said it was just family being family. I told myself I was lucky to have in-laws who cared. That's the kind of man I was. Trusting, naive, grateful for scraps of affection. For the first few years, things seemed normal. Madison worked her way up at a marketing agency. I managed construction projects around Chicago, pulling in decent money but working long hours. We built what looked like a good life. Vacations, dinners out, social media posts that made us look like a dream couple. But I started noticing cracks around year 6. Madison stopped wearing her wedding ring at work. She'd come home later, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked, she'd say it was just client dinners. Then there were the sudden weekend work retreats, always somewhere nice, always conveniently timed right after arguments about money. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. That nearly broke me. She was the only real family I had left. Madison cried at the funeral, held my hand, said all the right words. But the night I came home after the burial, she didn't ask how I was holding up. She asked if my grandmother had left anything behind. That should have been my first red flag. Turns out, Grandma June left me a lot more than money. She left me a connection, her old lawyer, Richard Lawson, who'd handled her estate and knew every legal trick in the book. She told me before she died, "Don't tell anyone about what I left you until it's yours. Secrets like that can rot people's hearts." I didn't understand what she meant until that night. 10 years into my marriage, when I stood in the hallway listening to my wife, her mother, her sister, and my best friend laugh about bleeding me dry. Madison had always made me feel like she was my safe place. Turns out she was the storm the whole time. And the inheritance they were all waiting for? It wasn't just money anymore. It was bait, because I wasn't about to let any of them walk away clean. The morning after that anniversary dinner, Madison kissed me goodbye like always. Same soft tone, same fake smile, then drove off to work in her silver Lexus. I watched her car disappear down the block, my jaw tight enough to crack. I didn't cry. I didn't even rage. I just stood there and thought, you've made a fool out of the wrong man. By 8:30 a.m., I was in Richard Lawson's office. The man was pushing 70, white hair slicked back, voice like gravel. He'd been my grandmother's lawyer for decades, the kind of guy who'd rather bleed out than show emotion. When I told him what I'd overheard, he didn't flinch. He just asked for details, who said what, when, and how long they'd been scheming. When I finished, he sat back, tapped his pen on his desk and said, "You don't stop thieves by confronting them, Ethan. You stop them by documenting them." So that's what I did. I went home, set up a hidden voice recorder under the couch, another in the kitchen vent, and installed a small Wi-Fi camera behind the bookshelf in the living room. Madison never noticed. Why would she? She was too busy pretending to be the perfect wife. The next few days were straight out of a bad play. Madison started acting like she'd fallen in love with me all over again. Cooked my favorite meals, packed my lunches, left little love notes in my truck. Every gesture made my stomach twist. Then came the text messages. "Can't wait for the money to come through. Babe, we deserve something good after all this stress." Stress? The only stress was keeping myself from blowing up. Meanwhile, Tyler was back to calling me bro. Like we hadn't drifted apart the past few years. He invited me to watch the Bears game, offered to help me invest smart when the inheritance hit. The audacity made me sick. By midweek, I had hours of recordings, phone calls, whispered conversations, even one video of Madison sitting on our couch telling her mom she'd finally be free soon. Richard told me to keep calm, keep collecting, and act normal. "They'll hang themselves if you let them," he said. So I played my part. I smiled through dinner, talked about future vacations, even brought up remodeling the kitchen, something she'd mentioned before. Madison's eyes lit up like she'd hit the jackpot. "We could make it our dream home," she said, fingers tracing my wrist. "As long as you trust me to handle the budget." That's when I knew she'd done this before. She'd been handling the money for a long time. I went through our bank statements that night, sitting in the garage with my laptop so she wouldn't see. What I found made my stomach drop, withdrawals, transfers, tiny amounts here and there. $200, $400, $650. All just under the radar, but together, nearly $14,000 gone in 18 months. All to an account I'd never heard of. She'd even written fake memos, groceries, contractor deposit, car maintenance. Every transaction looked ordinary. It wasn't. She'd been quietly bleeding us for over a year, and she wasn't doing it alone. The transfer notes included a name, C. Hartwell, her sister, Chloe. That's when I realized this wasn't just an affair. It was a coordinated hit. The inheritance, the lies, the fake affection. It all connected. Madison, her family, and Tyler weren't planning to just steal the money. They were planning to make me look like I'd lost it, drain me, take the house, leave me with nothing but debt and a bad reputation. I should have felt broken. Instead, I felt awake for the first time in years. They wanted to play games? Fine. But I was about to rewrite the rules. Thursday night, Madison came home late again. She claimed she'd stayed at the office for a campaign launch, but she smelled like whiskey and expensive cologne. Not the kind either of us could afford. I said nothing, just smiled, poured her a glass of water, and asked how her presentation went. She told me it was stressful, that her boss had been hovering too much. I nodded, pretending to believe every word while the recorder under the table picked up every syllable. An hour later, she was asleep. I checked her phone. She'd changed her passcode. That was new. So I went for her laptop instead, the one she used for work. I'd seen her enter the password enough times to remember it. My lucky star 09. The woman really thought she was untouchable. Her email was a mess. Marketing files, newsletters, Amazon orders. But buried deep in her drafts folder was a chain of unsent messages. Each one read like a diary. Short, coded, but obvious enough once I knew what I was looking for. She'd been documenting everything, like a paper trail, but not for herself, for evidence. That's when I found the first bombshell. Madison wasn't just planning to take the inheritance. She was planning to accuse me of domestic abuse to secure everything in the divorce. One draft was titled Statement for HR. It said, "Ethan's been controlling and erratic lately. I've been afraid to tell anyone, but my family knows. I'm only staying until I can leave safely." I scrolled further. There were drafts of emails addressed to her mom, her sister, even to HR at her company. All dated weeks apart. All describing me as a dangerous man she was trying to protect herself from. The timeline matched perfectly with when she'd started moving money. She'd been setting me up for months. If I'd confronted her when I overheard that call, she would have hit send on those emails and painted me as an abusive husband. I'd lose my job, my reputation, maybe even my freedom. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was character assassination. And then I found something that twisted the knife further. She had photos, fake evidence. A bruise on her wrist, a tear in her blouse, an image of a broken glass on the floor, dated, captioned, staged perfectly. I recognized the glass. I'd broken it 2 months ago unloading the dishwasher. She must have taken pictures and spun it into a story. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking, realizing the woman sleeping 10 feet away had built an entire alternate reality. One where I was the villain. I sent everything to Richard that night, screenshots, file copies, timestamps. He replied in 5 minutes flat, "We're past betrayal. This is criminal. Keep playing dumb. She's not working alone." He was right, because the next morning, I got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was calm, deep, and way too familiar. "Tyler," he said. "Hey man, just checking in. Heard about your grandmother's inheritance finally coming through. That's huge. You need help managing it? I know a guy who can make that money grow fast. Madison mentioned it last night." I didn't respond right away. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Last night, Madison had been home all evening with me, or so I thought. She must have stepped outside during her phone call with a client. She wasn't talking to HR. She was talking to him. And just like that, I realized something even worse. Tyler wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was living a double life with her. They had joint investments, burner accounts, and, according to one of Madison's hidden text threads, a shared plan. The messages were sickening. "Tyler, once he loses his temper, we're free. Madison, he won't. He's too careful. But we'll find a way. Vivian's working on it. Vivian, her mother, the woman who'd hugged me at holidays, called me her favorite son-in-law and asked if I could help fix her porch last summer. She wasn't just supporting Madison. She was coaching her. 3 generations of manipulation, mother, daughters, and now my best friend tangled in their web. I closed the laptop, stared at my sleeping wife, and knew there was no saving anything. But I wasn't going to let them destroy me. They wanted evidence. I'd give them some. Only mine would hold up in court. By Friday morning, the performance was starting to hurt. Every time Madison smiled, I saw the lies behind her teeth. Every "I love you" sounded like a taunt. Still, I kept my face straight and my tone light. You can't get revenge if you show your hand too soon. I spent that weekend turning my house into a crime scene, but one I controlled. Every email, every transaction, every call went through a new system. I mirrored her laptop, installed a keystroke tracker on the family computer, and synced her phone backups to a cloud folder only I could access. Then I met with Richard again. He looked over the mountain of evidence I'd collected and actually smiled. A thin, shark-like grin that told me he already had a plan. "She's trying to build a story," he said. "We're going to give her one. Just not the one she expects." He helped me open a separate trust account for the inheritance, one that legally couldn't be touched by a spouse or transferred without dual authorization. I added another layer, a fake investment account that looked real enough to fool anyone without legal training. We'd move a small amount of money into it, enough to make Madison believe she'd found her jackpot. While Richard handled the paperwork, I handled the performance. I started acting distracted, nervous, pulled out my phone mid-conversation like I was hiding something. Madison noticed within a day. "You seem off lately," she said one night while we were watching TV. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff," I told her. "Got a big project bid coming up." She smiled that tight, fake smile. "I'm sure you'll handle it. You always do." It wasn't reassurance, it was reconnaissance. I could feel her testing the edges, seeing if I'd caught on. That weekend, I planted the bait. I left an opened email on my laptop addressed to Richard with the subject line, "Inheritance Transfer Confirmation." The message looked like a summary of our plan to move the $50,000 into an investment portfolio. I even included fake account numbers. 2 days later, while I was running errands, Madison texted me, "Saw your email with Richard. Should we talk about the transfer before you do anything? We're a team. Remember? Bingo." I wrote back, "Yeah, I'll show you everything Friday when it's finalized." She sent back a heart emoji. That same night, she called her mother. I recorded the whole conversation. "Madison, he's transferring it Friday morning. We'll move it that night before he realizes what's happening. Vivian, make sure Tyler's ready. Once it's done, disappear for a week. We'll handle the paperwork from here." It was almost too easy. By Thursday, I'd rehearsed every detail with Richard. We'd document the theft attempt in real time, involve the bank's fraud department, and lock the trust the second she made her move. But I wanted something more than legal victory. I wanted them to feel the ground fall out from under them. So I added one final piece. That night, while Madison slept, I composed an email from her account to Tyler and copied her mother and sister on it. It read, "All set for tomorrow. Once Ethan sends the funds, we'll pull the trigger. No turning back after that." Then I scheduled it to send automatically Friday at 9:05 a.m., 5 minutes after the transfer was supposed to happen. I set the trap. All I had to do was wait. Madison thought she was about to win. But by the end of Friday, her entire world, and everyone who helped her build it, would be in free fall. Friday came like a thunderclap. I woke up with the kind of quiet focus that feels dangerous, like someone has lit a fuse and you can hear it burning. I went through my routine, coffee, double-checked the recorder placements, one last sync to the cloud. Richard and I had rehearsed everything down to the word. The trust account would accept the inheritance at 9 a.m. The fake investment account would show an incoming wire. The scheduled email from Madison's account would land at 9:05 a.m., and the bank's fraud team, prepped and on my side, would freeze any suspicious outbound movement. It was a clean machine. Madison was calm. Too calm. She made pancakes like an actress giving a matinee performance. kissed my cheek, and told me to enjoy the big day. Her phone buzzed a dozen times before she left for work. I watched her go, watched the Lexus disappear, and for the first time in a decade I felt completely alone in a house that used to be full of someone else's lies. At 9 a.m., my account notification pinged. The money landed. I kept my phone face down on the table and didn't react. Richard texted, "Proceed." At 9:03, I casually opened my laptop and left the inheritance transfer confirmation email in plain sight with the fake account numbers. At 9:05, the scheduled email from Madison hit Tyler's inbox. I saw the read receipts roll in. They thought the plan was on. This is where it went sideways and where the second, uglier twist hit me. Tyler didn't wait for the night. He moved early. At 9:12 a.m., I got a call from a blocked number. It was Tyler, voice clipped. I need to swing by. Something's come up." I told him I was in a meeting. He said, "It can't wait." There was fear under his words, not the casual swagger he'd always used with me. He came over anyway. He walked in like a man who'd rehearsed courage and found it wanting. He sat on my couch, didn't make eye contact, and I could hear my recorder humming. I pretended to pour him a beer, then left the bottle on the table so he'd relax. He did. That's when he made the mistake. "You can't do this, man," he said. "We had a deal." He reached into his jacket like he was going to pull out proof. Instead, his hands shook and he fumbled a crumpled receipt and a printed map of a wire transfer route. He'd already started moving money of his own, siphoning small chunks out for months into an account in his name. "So you were stealing from them too?" I asked. I kept my voice neutral. The cam behind the bookshelf caught his face when it went red. He looked like a kid who'd been cornered. "Ethan, listen. I didn't want to be left with crumbs. Vivi promised me more. She said I'd run the new business she's buying if I helped her. Tyler stood to get a cut. She told me June took from them years ago. Said we were getting what was owed." There it was, the first real crack beyond greed. Vivian had a story she'd fed them, that my grandmother, June, had wronged their family long ago. It explained why she'd been so rabid, why she'd coached Madison and Chloe with surgical precision. It turned their greed into a kind of twisted, righteous theft in their heads. But Tyler's next words were the real twist. "I don't want to share it with them," he said, voice dropping. "I'm pulling my part now. I'm taking what I can and running. Madison doesn't know I moved some funds already. She'll come back and think we did it together." He swallowed. "I can get us out before they notice. I can take you with me if you want. Walk away." He expected shock, maybe bargaining. What he didn't expect was quiet, deliberate rage. "Leave?" I asked. "You want to walk away after helping destroy my life?" My hands were steady even though my heart hammered the wall. "You were part of a plan to frame me for things you know I'd never do. You think you get to walk?" He tried to say something about survival and obligation. On tape, he sounded small. Then Tyler made the second mistake. He tried to bribe me. He slid a flash drive across the coffee table and said, "Take it. It's everything. Transfers, passwords, conduit accounts. You can make this disappear if you pay me." I laughed out loud. The sound was cold. I picked up the drive, plugged it into my laptop, and with a single click, I started copying files. Every illicit transfer Tyler had made. Every late-night text to Vivian. The files were there. He'd put his own skeletons in the closet and left the door open. As I watched his face, something worse unspooled in my head. If Tyler was trying to cut Madison out to double-cross the family, then their conspiracy wasn't a neat, family-run theft. It was fracturing. People who think they're clever enough to con someone else often forget the curveball within their own circle. Mistrust. Before Tyler left, he said one more thing that chilled me more than any lie. "Vivian doesn't want money for herself," he said, eyes flicking away. "She wants something else. She's been planning this for years. It's not just about cash." I didn't get an answer before he walked out, but the recorder did. His voice, his receipts, his confession, every desperate whisper, all saved. I sat there with the files and the hum of the house around me and realized the plan I'd thought was clean had just been layered over with a darker motive I hadn't imagined. Tyler's betrayal cut different because it showed the family wasn't unified. They were working at cross purposes, and one loose end had just started unraveling everything. Richard texted, "Bring everything to my office. Now." I packed the flash drive, the screenshots, the new receipts Tyler left behind, and for the first time I understood that stopping them would mean exposing something far worse than greed. Whatever Vivian wanted, it ran deeper than money. Richard didn't speak for the first 10 minutes after I told him everything Tyler had said. He just stared at the papers spread across his desk, the receipts, the screenshots, the confession audio, and his expression kept darkening. When he finally looked up, his voice was quiet, like someone lowering the volume right before a bomb goes off. "Ethan," he said, "you need to prepare yourself. This isn't about inheritance or even revenge. Vivian's been waiting a long time for this." He opened an old manila folder from his filing cabinet, something covered in dust, and slid it toward me. Inside were copies of court filings from 1987, property disputes, personal letters, and a will modification signed by June Cole, my grandmother. Richard leaned back. "Your grandmother didn't just own property around Chicago. She owned half of a small real estate portfolio, joint ventures, rental units, flipping contracts. Her business partner back then was a man named Frank Hartwell." The name punched the air out of my lungs. Hartwell, Vivian's maiden name. He nodded. Yes, Vivian's father. The folder was full of history I'd never known. June and Frank had been close, business partners, maybe even something more, until it went bad. In 1987, she discovered that Frank had been embezzling funds from their joint account, falsifying invoices, and laundering money through shell tenants. When she confronted him, he cleaned out the rest and disappeared. The case never made it to trial because Frank died of a heart attack 2 months later. June liquidated everything, paid off the debts, and moved on. But according to these documents, Frank left behind a wife and 2 little girls, one of them 6-year-old Vivian Hartwell. Richard closed the folder and said, "Vivian's been carrying that grudge her entire life. She blames June for ruining her family. Said your grandmother stole everything that was rightfully theirs. She's been telling that story for 40 years, Ethan. And when her daughter married you," he paused, "she saw her chance to finish what her father started." It was all starting to make sick sense. The perfect politeness that had always felt performative. The way Vivian inserted herself into every decision Madison and I ever made. The backhanded comments about how lucky I was to have married into their family. The obsession with our finances. It wasn't random. It was generational hate disguised as motherly guidance. "She groomed her daughter for this," I said quietly. "Madison never stood a chance." Richard didn't sugarcoat it. Maybe she did. Maybe she chose to play along once she realized what she could gain. The room went silent except for the ticking of his old desk clock. I felt something crack inside me. Not anger this time, just the hollow, cold understanding of how deep this ran. Vivian hadn't just turned Madison against me. She'd raised her to believe I was a debt to be collected. Every act of affection, every fake smile, every touch was a transaction to repay her mother's imagined loss. "Vivian wanted the Cole name humiliated," Richard continued. "She wanted you accused, bankrupt, and broken the same way she says her family was. The money was just decoration." I leaned forward, hands gripping the edge of the desk. "She doesn't know she's about to be the one humiliated." Richard's face softened for a second. "Make sure you want that, Ethan. When people like Vivian lose control, they don't just collapse. They burn everything they can reach." But I was past caring. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity anymore. I was dealing with generational vengeance. A woman who'd built her identity around hating my last name. As I drove home through the cold November dusk, everything looked different. The city lights blurred into streaks, the skyline jagged like broken glass. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done being their experiment. That night, I sat in my truck across from Vivian's house. Her living room lights were on, her curtains open. She was pouring wine, laughing with Chloe, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. In less than 24 hours, they'd all know that June Cole's grandson hadn't inherited just her money. He'd inherited her fight. I didn't sleep that night, Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vivian laughing behind that wine glass. The same smirk she'd worn at my wedding. The same look Madison had copied every time she thought I didn't notice. By sunrise, I'd made peace with one thing. I wasn't getting my old life back. But I could make damn sure they'd never ruin another person the way they tried to ruin me. The plan went live that Saturday morning. Richard had set up everything. Legal filings, police contacts, the fraud investigators from the bank. The beauty of it was how ordinary it all looked on paper. Just a series of confirmations, subpoenas, and automated alerts. What they didn't know was that each one led straight back to their own names. At 10 a.m., I texted Madison, "Can you meet me at Vivian's? We need to go over the investment paperwork together before finalizing." Her reply came instantly, "Already here. Smiley face. Mom's making brunch. Tyler's coming too. Perfect." Richard and I pulled up 20 minutes later. He walked with a slight limp, gray suit sharp as ever, a folder under his arm that might as well have been a guillotine. We stepped inside without knocking. The living room went silent. Vivian froze mid-sip. Madison's smile flickered when she saw Richard. Tyler was standing behind the couch, phone in hand, face pale. Chloe looked like she wanted to melt into the carpet. "Morning," I said. "Hope everyone's ready for a little financial review." Before they could speak, Richard placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside was a thick stack of printed emails, their emails, the ones I'd collected, plus the one I'd scheduled from Madison's account. He read them aloud like a judge reading sentencing. Then came the recordings. Every whisper, every fake apology, every conversation where they planned to drain me and frame me. Vivian tried to interrupt, but Richard's voice cut through hers like steel. "These are admissible recordings, Mrs. Hartwell. You might want to sit down." When he finished, I laid out the final piece. Tyler's confession. His voice played from my phone, shaking, admitting the embezzlement and the double-cross. I watched Vivian's expression twist. Not guilt, not remorse, just cold rage at being outmaneuvered. She turned on Tyler first. "You stupid idiot. I told you to wait," she shouted. He fired back. "You told me a lot of things you didn't plan to keep, Vivian." The family started to implode right there. Madison yelled at her mother for lying. Chloe accused Madison of being selfish, and Tyler, ever the coward, tried to storm out, only to find two uniformed officers waiting on the porch. They weren't there for me. They were there for them. Fraud, theft, attempted extortion, conspiracy, the charges went on like a grocery list. Richard had filed everything that morning, complete with the time-stamped evidence. The cops read them their rights while Vivian sat there shaking, mascara bleeding into her wine glass. Madison looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. "You recorded everything?" she whispered. "Everything," I said. "Even the part where you said you were sick of pretending to love me." She didn't cry. She just dropped her head, like the performance was finally over. The divorce went through in record time. She walked away with nothing. Not the house, not the savings, not a dime of the inheritance. Tyler lost his job and vanished somewhere out west. Vivian's real estate license was revoked after the fraud charges. Chloe turned on all of them to save herself, signing statements that backed every piece of my evidence. They tore each other apart trying to shift the blame. Within 3 months, they were all broke, blacklisted, and bitter. Me? I took the $50,000 and started my own contracting company, just like I'd told Grandma June I would. I renamed it Hartwell Restoration, not as a tribute but as a scar. A reminder that even the ugliest wrecks can be rebuilt stronger. Sometimes at night, when I drive past their old neighborhood, I see the house dark and empty, for sale sign half fallen. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like closure, quiet, earned, necessary. Madison sent one last email a few months later. No apology, just a single line. "Was it all worth it?" I didn't reply. I just sent her the same thing Grandma used to tell me when people tried to take what wasn't theirs. Stealing a man's peace costs more than you can afford. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe.